Welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Each week we set the table for discussion about recipes and stories from the authors of The Joy of Cooking, Kitchen Victories and Misadventures, and most importantly, what we are cooking and eating right now. We're glad you've joined us at the table today. I'm Shannon Larson, home cook, Joy of Cooking user and fan, and pickle juice enthusiast.
I'm Megan Scott, co-author of the 2019 edition of The Joy of Cooking. I'm a food editor by day and avoider of dish duty by night, and I have strong intrusive thoughts whenever I have to prep cheese for a recipe.
We're going to get into that later.
I'm John Becker, fourth-generation co-author and steward of The Joy of Cooking, America's oldest family-run cookbook, and I think there's something very special about a meal that has several different forms of carbs.
Strong. I agree.
The other night we had pork vindaloo and aloo gobi and rice, and then also some naan and the three carbs together. It's just a triple threat.
I support
Wonderful.
it. It's excellent.
Yeah.
It's a fine way to eat. I will explain my intro.
Yeah, I am so curious.
It's just that the cheese is right there. You know, it's just right there. You're cutting it, you're grating it, whatever you're doing with it. It's just right there for the taking.
Yeah.
You know?
All of a sudden you're not hungry for whatever
Yeah.
it was you were making.
Exactly. What have you been cooking this week, Shannon?
Let's see. We threw my little birthday party this past weekend, and it was Midwestern themed. And I think everybody did a great job bringing Midwestern dishes. There was green bean casserole. There were Polish roses. It was really fun and silly, and I think people got into it. Usually I feel like our parties have kind of elevated food, and it was fun to not do that this time around. I'm going to do that more often.
Did you have a favorite dish that someone brought?
I have to say it was probably the deviled eggs, but that's just like one of my favorite
I
foods.
mean, that's a top tier food, regardless of a party or Midwestern
know.
theme, whatever. Those are just excellent.
They're so fun.
And yet it is not something you just make
No.
casually.
No.
No, but I should. And then it's officially larb season in our house. It tends to be like a warm weather dish that we make, and we have so much lettuce right now. So we put some larb together last night, and it was so good. So much.
Did you put mint in there?
Yeah, mint from the garden, like everything, like a ton of stuff from the garden. Finally, we can actually put meals together using mostly vegetables from,
So nice
It
to
is
just go
nice.
out and pick stuff.
and it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you two?
The pork vindaloo was really good. That was like we kind of cheated on that because, typically it gets marinated for a while and there's a slow simmer involved, but instead
We did not plan ahead.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, it was just browned the pork, and then instead of usually like the marinade's getting browned on there as well. So instead, I just fried the marinade mixture, like the paste, in the pork fat that was rendered, and then threw it into a pressure cooker, and it was done in no time.
And that was a Ragavan Iyer recipe, right?
Right? Yeah. He has 3 different recipes for vindaloo in the 660 Curries book that's been around for a while. It's a wonderful book.
Great recipe too. It turned out really well.
Yeah.
I loved it with the multiple carbs. Highly recommend. I really loved making, so for your birthday party, your Midwestern potluck, I made my mom's ramen cabbage salad.
Gosh, it's so good.
Which I feel like every time I bring this up to other people, they're like, oh, I remember this salad my grandma used to make it. So maybe this will not be a surprise to anyone, but you just take dry, instant ramen noodles and break them up in the package. And then you toast them in a skillet, and you toast sesame seeds and almonds, and then reserve the seasoning packets and put that in it's a very simple dressing that has, soy sauce and oil and a little sugar and the ramen seasoning. And then you just use a package of coleslaw mix, so like shredded cabbage, and just mix it all together. And it's just it's very crunchy. And I
Yeah.
feel like most potlucks need like a good crunchy salad. And so I feel like it's a good addition to
Yeah.
any gathering.
It's fun to eat. And it's probably the healthier option out of everything else that people brought.
Probably, although I mean, you're not eating for health.
Yeah,
let's be real.
The fried noodle salad
Yeah.
was
That is the
healthiest.
healthiest
Yeah,
thing that was on that table.
for real.
And I just wanted to circle back on our recipe of the week from last week, which was roasted rhubarb on page 195. And John, do you want to talk a little about how we used it? I think I mentioned it last time, but we'll go over it again.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we chopped it up a little bit, but it was still pretty chunky, and just used it as a compote type topping for honey yogurt panna cotta.
which is also another joy recipe that I highly recommend. And it's super, super easy. It's basically just stirring some things together and heating it until the gelatin melts and then letting it sit.
Did I see somebody made something and you reposted it on Instagram too?
Yeah, somebody made the pan bagnat.
Oh yeah, and they like pressed it. Oh, that's what it was. That was cool.
Yeah, that was fun to see. Yeah.
It's fun to see the other people cooking these recipes and like what they post. I love it.
Check out the Joy of Cooking to see. We'll repost it or we'll save we should do a highlight.
Yeah, you should.
Highlight of people cooking our recipes.
Good idea.
Get on it.
Yeah, get on it, John.
Put it on the list.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about an easy way to enhance your meals. Whether they are a healthy vegan grain bowl or that late night snack we'll pretend didn't happen the next day, and that easy way is Marshall's Hot Sauce. For 15 years, chef and cookbook author Sarah Marshall has been hand-making and bottling these delicious sauces. She works directly with local farmers and highlights the lovely flavors of fresh seasonal produce. They're gluten-free, there are no additives, dyes, waxes, or binders, and they have mouth-watering combinations like serrano ginger lemongrass, or habanero carrot curry, or even whiskey smoked ghost, which was featured on Hot Ones. So head on over to marshallshotsauce.com, that's Marshall's, HAUTESAUCE.com, and see all the available sauces and spice blends. Oh, that's right. Sarah's created spice packets by dehydrating and freeze-drying actual produce, so you can impart flavor to your food with more vegetables. But that's a story for another day. Find all of these delicious creations at marshallshotsauce.com and enter HOTJOY, that's one word, capital H, AUTE, capital JOY, one word, at checkout for 20% off. That's HOTJOY at checkout for 20% off. And now, back to the show.
So this week's guest is Sarah On. Sarah is the social media manager at America's Test Kitchen and the creator of the website Honest Kitchen. On Instagram and TikTok, she brings her digital storytelling prowess to recording her experiences living at home with her Korean immigrant parents, chronicling her mother's cooking, grocery shopping trips, and other everyday moments accompanied by Sarah's personal reflections that are by turns touching, funny, and deeply moving. She has been featured on NBC News, ABC News, Yahoo News, and Good Morning America. And her mother, Nam Soon-an, immigrated to America in the 1990s with the hope of providing a better life for herself and her family. After finding her footing through various challenges and successes, she purchased a restaurant specializing in Asian noodle dishes in 2008 and successfully operated it for nearly a decade. Her philosophy on cooking and eating foods is to make them as delicious as possible, asserting that there are no inherently bad ingredients or foods. They're all meant to be enjoyed. So cook without fear and enjoy food with excitement, love, and the same feelings of returning to your childhood favorite restaurant. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. I've been following you for a while on Instagram, and I think you're my favorite person on the entire app because your videos, they're beautiful. Your videos are so beautiful. They make me hungry and they make me think about my own mother and my own experiences cooking and watching my mom cook, and make me feel so grateful to have that experience. And also just, I love watching you and your mom, and she seems absolutely lovely. So thank you so much for all of the work you do on that. You must put a ton of work into that.
Thank you. Yeah, having the luxury of watching your mom cook is always a blessing that I think we realize as we get older. And as I've met people on my book tour, it seems like it's something we realize as we age into our 30s. I think when we hit around 25, we realize, oh my gosh, this home food made by mom or whoever is a parent figure to us is actual real luxury. So thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, I appreciated my mother's cooking growing up, but in a superficial way, I guess. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, she is working so hard to make all this food for her family almost every day. It's just a tremendous amount of work, but also the love that she put into it feels more palpable as you get older.
It does, yeah. I'm still learning more about it as I'm 29. I'll be 30 this year, and I'm just like it grows more and more each year.
Mm-hmm. How are you doing on? I know you're probably still on book tour, right?
I have one more event, and
Oh,
it was
okay.
Oh,
yeah. I have one more
congratulations.
event. I was in Oregon for a bit, and that was really fun, by the way. But it's just been such a blessing to meet everyone because when you're only on the digital space and so secluded to just working at your desk writing this book, it feels so surreal and then so real to actually meet people physically. And it was such a blessing to just hear everyone's stories and have people relate to us and vice versa.
How have you been feeding yourself on book tour? It can be kind of intense.
A lot of Uber Eats. And we ate a lot of Korean food when we were developing this book. So I'll admit I sometimes didn't crave Korean food. That's just me being very honest. But I'm slowly getting out of that and getting back into Korean food.
I loved the video you did of you and your mother prepping your dog's food
Oh, I
for your
saw
book
that.
tour. I just thought that was the sweetest thing.
Yeah, I'm watching her outside. That's why my eyes sometimes go off the screen because I'm watching her. She's sitting in the yard right now, sunbathing.
What a life.
I
know.
so rough.
Your dog eats so well. I was like, oh my gosh, that's better than I feed myself sometimes.
I know.
Same. And I think it goes to show, like, especially with Asian culture, we don't say I love you, or my parents' generation, they don't say I love you. When we finished this book, I asked my mom, should we hug? And she's like, no, I'm not going to hug. They express it through food, whether it's for their family, their loved ones, and that includes our dog.
I love that kind of acts of service. You can feel the
Yeah.
love, even though it's not said.
Yeah, 100%.
We cooked several things from your cookbook, last night for dinner, and everything was incredible. We did the kimchi jjigae and the cilantro and radish kimchi.
Kimchi, yep.
And the broccoli tofu banchan also. And I really loved. I had never had that one before.
That one's a unique one. Not super unique, but it's very niche to what Koreans eat. And it hasn't really made its way to American blogs just yet. But that's quite an impressive meal.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I feel like the kimchi jjigae was very quick to put together. At
Yeah,
least
you
it
just
seemed.
mix and heat. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, everything was really convenient considering that it was making a few banchan. Definitely was easy on the prep.
Yeah, but everything
I
was
love hearing
delicious. And please tell your mother we loved all the recipes.
I will. She'll be very happy. Thank you. Kimchi jjigae is kimchi stew. That's what it is in English. That's my favorite recipe actually out of the book.
Oh, really?
It's a very nostalgic recipe that Korean moms make when we return home from college or wherever you went. And it's something that I personally don't find at restaurants much. So it's very homey, it's very motherly, and it's a very nostalgic recipe for a lot of us.
Are there other variations of that recipe that your mother makes or that you make? Like this one, the one in the book, it has Spam. It has some pork belly, cut up beef hot dogs in it. Are there other like
Yeah.
variations that you do on that recipe?
No, that one is we make it simply like that. And that kimchi jjigae recipe is actually very unique because my mom, as you guys cooked it, cooks the pork belly with butter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people were wondering why would you cook such a fatty meat in butter? But my mom did a lot of research when developing this recipe of how she can make it so delicious. And she was looking up what mom and pop shops in Korea were doing, the very successful mom and pop shops, not the fancy Michelin restaurants, because this is a home cookbook. So she did a lot of like deep research of what, the Korean food bloggers were writing about, not the stuff you find online from tourists, but what the Koreans are actually enjoying. And this very, very well-known and loved mom and pop shop that has lines out the door were cooking the pork belly in butter.
Oh, wow.
And so she learned that and then she adapted that, was inspired. I wish I knew the restaurant name. Unfortunately, I don't have it noted in my head right now. And that's kind of her own spin on kimchi jjigae, where if you noticed, it wasn't like a buttery stew where it was so heavy on the fatness. It should have just been a hint, just a very small hint of creaminess that complemented the savory pork belly fattiness.
Yeah, and it definitely helps the pork belly brown a little bit. You have the kind of brown butter note. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Smelled really good.
Yeah. And also want to note, my mom's favorite recipe is the cilantro kimchi. So I
really?
just find it interesting. You made both our favorite recipes in the book.
That was a really interesting recipe to me because I don't think I had really encountered cilantro in much, if any, Korean cooking before. And you kind of speak to that in the head note. Could you tell us a little bit about that recipe?
Yeah, so that's actually a very, very unique recipe. When I first shared it in 2022, I believe, you could find it nowhere, even on Korean blogs and websites. Now you could find it on Korean websites, the blogs there, but you still can't find it on Korean American websites here. And the reason for that is because that recipe originates from Northern Korea, and Northern Korea borders China, and Chinese cuisine, as we may know, uses cilantro throughout different regions. So it makes sense that the bordering country, Northern Korea, would have a liking towards cilantro. But South Korea, my dad's South Korean, I'm generalizing, but they don't like cilantro. And you can generalize them enough to the point where finding cilantro in South Korea is kind of hard. But Northern Koreans like it. And so my mom's mom is from Northern Korea. I say Northern Korea because back then Korea still wasn't split. And that's something that they ate all the time. And so my mom grew up eating that and watching the mothers and the moms and the women make that as they made other kimchi together. And it's something that she learned to make, and it's been passed on, and it's become a bit more popular with South Koreans as they're liking cilantro a bit more.
I'm glad to hear that. I love cilantro personally.
It's a shame if someone didn't get that DNA.
Yeah, I know.
Still trying to convert my father. I guess it skipped a generation.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't try very hard. Not anymore. He's set in his ways.
What made you decide initially to write this book with your mom?
There's multiple reasons why. The first reason is the obvious one. I think, especially as an immigrant and as a Korean American, I realized with my language, I'm not fluent in Korean. And if I were to continue on with life and have kids, should I want kids, they're going to be unable to speak Korean because I can't teach it to them. And if they're not going to be able to speak it, their kids won't be able to. 5 generations later, I don't know what Korean American will look like, what it means to be Korean American. And that very much applies to food as well. If we don't learn these kimchi recipes now, where just my mom's generation, they were making it to get through the harsh winter months, post-war and poverty. Because Korea, I don't think people realize this. Like kimchi is not a food that is just trendy. It's the one food that Koreans could only afford to eat up until the 1980s. That's how long Korea was poor for. Korea didn't really prosper after that when they had the Olympics event there. That's when Korea started to boom economically and become a bit more independent. In the 1980s, it's not that far
No,
from
that's
now.
not a long time
It's
ago.
very recent. So I think people often forget that Korea, just one generation ago, we were very poor. And these recipes have so much significance, but people are only seeing the K-pop, the K skincare and whatnot. And I just thought it was so important to collect these recipes and honor them from people who watched their parents and ancestors make it before cookbooks were a thing. And so I wanted someone who looked like my mom to make a recipe book. I wanted to make this with her. And that's why the front cover, we're very deliberate with what we were showing a Korean mom to kind of capture the type of cooking you'll get with this book. And the second reason is it was just an outlet for me. When I graduated college, I got my first full-time job. It wasn't in the food space because I work full-time in the food space now. I just needed an outlet, and it was just therapy, learning to cook and seeing my mom cook. So that's one reason why.
I also love on your Instagram page that you cook in your mom's kitchen and it's not staged at all. It's like a normal family kitchen, which I really appreciate. Sometimes, sometimes those cooking videos can feel very, very staged, and it's nice to see something a little bit different.
I will say my mom hates her kitchen.
Oh no.
It's a very imperfect but perfect kitchen in that it's so homey. It's for the
Yeah.
kitchen we grew up with since I was 5 years old. But it's very lopsided. Like if you put a marble on our counter, it's going to slide right, it's going to roll right off.
Oh, wow.
My mom so wishes she had a gas stove because she used to cook for a living, and so she's used to the fire, and she says it flavors the food differently. But our house can't support a gas stove. And so as a cook, it's her nightmare. But as a home, it is a piece of her heart is definitely in there.
Yeah.
Did you talk with her at all about, when she moved to the United States and then as she, became like a restaurant owner, was there anything about her traditional recipes that she would make that changed due to not having the ingredients maybe she had in Korea? or just learning things in a restaurant setting that you applied in this book?
Definitely two things. I think the first is my mom's cooking philosophy when it comes to cooking, is that you have to adapt to wherever you are. So for her, like she's not going to say you have to use Korean soy sauce. In fact, in our book, she says, my favorite's Kikkoman regular soy sauce. Don't use the one that uses less sodium. And that's a Japanese brand. And a lot of Koreans will say, you have to use dark soy sauce for the soups. You have to use light soy sauce for this. And my mom's like, it barely makes a difference. Just use Kikkoman. And then she also uses three crab fish sauce. Yeah, I mean, just objectively speaking, it's the best fish sauce. And that's commonly used in Vietnamese cuisine. And so my mom adapts to what's available and is very open-minded to other ingredients, and that's her philosophy. And one criticism that we get, especially from Koreans, like I think when it comes to any ethnic cuisine, the criticisms you get the most are people who are most familiar with it. So it makes sense that Koreans would criticize it. But they're saying, oh yeah, the Honest Kitchen, 엄마, she uses sugar in almost every recipe. But Koreans don't traditionally use sugar. My mom's like, girl, it's 2025. Why would I not be using sugar? And she's like, sugar, because the thing is, sugar didn't become available to Koreans, like widely available until the 1950s, because again, Korea was very poor, and so they would use plum extract syrup. So my mom uses plum extract syrup for that multidimensional sweetness, but she also uses granulated sugar because she says this isn't the Joseon dynasty, and she says also sugar isn't, like, people don't understand, sugar isn't used to add just sweetness, it's a flavor enhancer. So she'll use like a quarter teaspoon or eighth teaspoon of it, but some people don't understand it's not to add sweetness.
Right.
So she's very, very open-minded. There's no bad ingredients. We openly use MSG. There's a whole page on there discussing my disdain towards people who have a problem with it if it's not health related. And quite frankly speaking, I don't know anyone that has health issues with MSG.
Yeah, no, neither do we. We have a little jar of it next to our stove where the salt is.
It's amazing. Ajinomoto is the best.
Yeah.
And then my mom's other take on restaurant cooking that's different from this cookbook is that when she owned a restaurant, she had to cook for survival. No one wants to own a restaurant. It breaks apart your family. And she had to make foods to make sure that people wanted to come back versus foods made for this cookbook and at home. It's just purely made with love.
What you said about adding sugar to recipes reminded me a lot of my great-grandmother, who would often add just a little bit of sugar, probably like a quarter half teaspoon to almost everything, to just add a little bit of like everything from like her green beans to pimento cheese. I'm from the South, so a lot of Southern foods, but she would add just a little like pinch of sugar to everything. And it's just about balance. It's not to make it taste sweet, just the same way you would add salt and it brings out other flavors. That adding a little bit of sugar just really balances everything out.
And was her food amazing?
She was a very good cook. Yeah.
Exactly, because she added that sugar and she knew those ingredients.
I also was thinking a lot about my great-grandmother reading your book because you talk about sonmat. Would you talk a little bit about that for listeners, about the concept of like just knowing how to cook something by feel or like it's in your hands?
Yeah, so sonmat, son is hand in Korean, and mat is taste or flavor. So we have a recipe in there called mat kimchi. It means like very good flavored kimchi. But sonmat basically is someone's innate ability to make food taste amazing. It's someone's talent that's just unexplainable. And I always tell people, you give two people the same recipe, the person with sonmat is going to make it better, even if they follow the recipe exactly how it says it should be followed. And I have a great example. I just made kimchi for my mom on Mother's Day.
Oh my God.
I followed the recipe exactly. In fact, our cookbook recipe, but I was recording myself too. So I think this is maybe why I was making content with it. So I had to mix it for quite a bit to get the right shots. And then in the end, I was like, oh, this doesn't taste right.
Oh no.
Because I had over mixed it and I didn't realize it. And then my mom made kimchi just this past weekend. Again, same exact recipe. And it was the recipe that we created together that's perfected. And when you have sonma, what happened in her recipe when she was making it is they understand and respect every ingredient when they're being mixed together, where they understand like how to dance with the ingredients. And when you make kimchi, you have to mix it just right so that you don't overmix it and then it causes the Napa cabbage to secrete water and dilutes the seasoning. But it's very, very precise. And I tried to mimic her movements of how she mixes it, and I couldn't do it. But all of that dance and when to lift up the fingers and put pressure on it, even like the order of ingredients she puts it in, how she spreads it out, it's all derived from sonmat. And that's kind of the secret talent you need to make a great recipe.
I watched the video you're talking about of your mother making the kimchi and how she puts the giant bowl on the floor and squats down to really get in there, because I mean the countertop is just, I mean, even for me, it's standing at the counter sometimes it's a little bit much, but I just love that, you know, she'll put like a towel down on the floor and just get right down there and get in there.
It's beautiful, I think, because that's how my ancestors and my grandma made it. When women would come together to make kimchi, all the women, and it's a really Korean cuisine with many cuisines. It's founded by the women, and I never want to forget that. And they would all squat and make 200 to 300 batches of kimchi for their family to survive those winter months. And I think it's just so beautiful how that passes down, and that imagery of my mom in the kitchen squatting. It's not intentional to be beautiful or poetic, but in a way it is. I love capturing those moments because I can't squat like that. I think it's the American side, because I know Koreans can do it in Korea, like little kids can do it. So there's a lot of thoughts that come with seeing that image.
I did have a question about, like the differences between your mother's kitchen, your family's kitchen, and America's Test Kitchen, and developing this cookbook. And I was just kind of curious, like how that played out. Did you guys send recipes to them and then they tried to test them as you wrote them? And then, was there like a feedback type situation, or?
It was very rigorous because that's America's Test Kitchen.
Right.
So I work there full time, for people who may not know, but I work on the marketing side. But this cookbook was a complete different project, like completely separate thing. So my mom developed all the recipes, and ATK, America's Test Kitchen for short, they wanted to honor these recipes as authentically as they could so it followed whatever my mom did. So my mom would develop a recipe. It could take her days to few weeks to write a recipe, and then she would teach it to me. And then I don't know if you guys know this, but I don't know if you know Made with Lao. He is a Chinese YouTuber. We were talking, and because Asians don't really measure, they kind of throw things by the handful. So we had to teach my mom how to use measuring spoons. ATK came over several times just to observe us, like how Koreans cook, what the Korean American working class is like. So they would just like sit and just observe us. And they had to teach my mom how to use measuring spoons, because my mom was just like, what are these little blue toys? And they're teaching her how to do a tablespoon of sugar. And so then my mom tried it, and then she would do a heaping tablespoon, and we'd be like, no, that's a heaping tablespoon. We need exactly 1 tablespoon for the cookbook. And then our food editor from ATK, he grabbed a butter knife and showed her how to level it. And she was like, are you serious? Like, this is what you guys do? Like, this is ridiculous. So there is some cultural differences there where we had to do that. And that's why in the book there's grams, because 1 small carrot can mean anything. And it's just ridiculous that America is one of 3 countries that uses volume measurements. So we had to teach her those things. And then when she developed the recipe, ATK came over several times. I had to watch her and write the recipe so I could turn it in for ATK. And I did video tutorials for each, because sometimes those measurements, even though I wrote it, they're very quick. Like these Asian cooks are very quick with their handfuls and whatnot. So I'd create tutorials for every recipe. Then I sent it to ATK. And then ATK cooks who are former Michelin chefs, came out of culinary school and have their own experience, would test the recipe to vet for it, to see if there's any issues. We didn't have any issues. And then they would polish it up so that it's formally written with our food editor and our ATK editor. And then they sent it back to me, and they said, now, Sarah, you test these recipes because you're more of a home cook. They're professional cooks. My mom's a former professional cook. And they said, I want you to test it out so we can vet that a home cook can do it. So that I had to test it all out. If there's any issues with their language, then I send it back to them. And that's what landed in the book.
Did you have your mom taste everything you made to make
I
sure
did.
it was
Yeah,
right?
she was there by my side for every single recipe. I had like 1.5 months to test like over 100
Oh
recipes.
my God.
So it was traumatizing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
it.
Because cookbooks, you usually have 1 to 3 years to develop it. One's on the short end of the stick. 3 years is kind of long. I think 2 years is kind of the sweet spot, but we had exactly 1 year.
Oh my gosh.
And that is not a very, a year sounds like a long time, but it's really not. It's really not.
No, I think like I'm not trying to boast or anything, but if you look at our cookbook, those pages are like I wish the font size was a bit bigger because it's packed.
Yeah, it is packed. It's packed full of good
Yeah.
stuff. I have kind of a niche question about, so there was a head note. I don't remember what recipe that this was a head note for, but you mentioned something about your mom's 900 calorie shake that she drinks every day.
Oh, that's the acorn jelly recipe.
Oh, the acorn jelly. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to ask like what does she put in there?
So my mom's a very efficient person. She wakes up every day at 4:30. She cooks for my dad because my dad does not have time to cook. He works as an exterior painter, which is someone who paints the outside of buildings and apartments. And so she needs a lot of energy because she's literally cooking all day and kind of running the show in our home. But her 900 calorie drink is a drink that she consumes to get all her nutrition for that day. And then after that, she eats whatever she wants, mainly like Korean ramen and just whatever she wants. It's all about balance. But in that drink, it's like whole milk, few scoops of almond protein powder, a few tablespoons of olive oil, and then she grinds up her nuts because she says it's too tiring to chew them. And then she dumps it in there as like a nut powder, some chia seeds, and like other things where she gets all her nutritional needs in one go.
I love that. I feel like that's really smart.
It is
And
so
yeah,
smart.
you got to fuel if you're getting up at 4:30 and then cooking a lot of food first thing, you've got to really fuel first thing in the morning.
I love those videos of her packing your dad's lunch and everything before he goes off to work. I just think that I just like watched so many of them the other night.
They're really beautiful.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the care that she takes to package everything and like cut things, like she always cuts the eggs so it's easier for him to eat them when he's like on site. Also,
Yeah.
your dad is absolutely adorable. He just is so funny. Every time he goes into the kitchen, he's just like smiling. I like when he goes
Yeah, he's
on
a really
camera.
pure person.
Yeah.
My parents are, I always tell people they're great parents, but they're also great human beings. And I think I really wanted to portray that in the book where like the working class people are also seen as well. So I think a lot of these books I've learned when there's any like creative freedom to make these things, it's not usually from the working class. And so for me, I really wanted to honor that background because they make up the majority of America. I'm a proud daughter of my parents, and food is a huge, huge part of what rejoices us together after a long day of work. And it's what we use to, have a roof over our heads. So all of that is honored in the book.
Yeah, it comes through really well. You and your mother did a really beautiful job.
Thank you.
Now that the book is out there in the world, are the measuring spoons like gathering dust or
She does use them actually.
Oh,
It's
wow.
really funny. We still use them because like it's so nice because when you actually collect your family's recipes, as you guys might know, it's nice because you get consistent recipes that turn out good all the time and you don't have to freehand it. So she does use it for a lot of the recipes where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to freehand it. I'm going to use this quarter teaspoon, 1 tablespoon and whatnot. But she does freehand some of the other recipes that she just would rather freehand it and not do dishes.
No, that's true. I mean, I feel like we cook our own recipes like from the book, and it's kind of like we get to turn our brains off a little bit.
You mean measuring
exactly, yeah.
properly?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys use your book all the time. Like you just had to replace the copy that you had in your kitchen, right? Because it was
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like
worse for wear.
you feel like you're retesting things, to make sure that, oh, maybe this could be a little better, or actually I think that we should do a tablespoon and a half in this, we're always retesting.
That would still traumatize me if like I thought like, oh, I should have done 2 tablespoons instead of 1. I don't know how
man.
you guys, I don't have that freedom yet to think like that.
John is always like, I don't know. I feel like we differ. I'm always of the opinion like everything can always be made slightly better. So when something's not perfect, that's just how life is. Like nothing is ever
Right.
going to be perfect. But when we find something that could have been better, John is like, "Oh my, maybe we can get this into the next printing. Maybe we can."
It is so not
And
surprising.
so when For listeners who may not know, like when you have a cookbook, when you print a cookbook and you want to make changes, maybe you find an error, like errors happen, spelling errors, grammatical errors, whatever. You can't just make these changes because it's a printed thing. So you can't change the page, the pagination, the page numbers. So sometimes you can get corrections in if you tweak the wording or you take out a word and add another one. So you have to be really strategic about corrections, but it's a complicated process.
Well, yeah, especially with Joy, just because there's not a lot of white space and in the book to play with. So yeah, you end up having to do kind of a Tetris type maneuver when you want to correct something. The bigger the correction, the more difficult it is, and maybe you have to rephrase something in another recipe in order to make room on the page. But yeah, I would imagine that, I mean, if you were to find something you want to change in the book, it might be a little bit easier for you than it is, just because, I mean, you definitely have some white space to work with. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, a little bit, although not a ton. I'm
No, I mean, you guys really did pack it full of some, I mean, the head notes are beautiful.
Yeah, there's lovely head notes, and then there's some kitchen. I love these little kitchen conversations.
Oh, I
where
love
you're
those.
talking to your mom, and just kind of, it's like a mini conversation in the recipe about the recipe.
For sure.
And sometimes you have differing opinions on something, which feels very relatable.
The kitchen conversations, I really wanted them to cover the questions I had because other people might have them. And also the stories too. I really wanted to cover stories that honors Korea's history, but also the modern day of the working class and sharing the richness in the ordinary. But all the stories too, if a problem is presented, it always resolves with a happy ending or a thing that makes you think a bit more.
So something we ask every guest is, what is your relationship to Joy of Cooking? Is it a cookbook that you probably not grew up with, but when did you become aware of it?
I think it's a cookbook everyone knows, right? So it's a cookbook that I think if someone needs to think of a cookbook, it's one of the things that comes first to mind. And it's probably the one that everyone has on their shelf. And so for me, it's something that I've always been familiar with and grew up with. And so it's an honor to talk with you guys, one of the most well-known and original cookbooks. And I think there's a lot to learn as well.
Well, we feel the same way about talking to you. It feels like such an honor to have you on the show and to talk about your beautiful book, because it's really special. I got a copy of it for my mom for Mother's Day, and
Thank
I'm
you so
hoping
much.
that we can cook through some of the recipes together and talk about them. But yeah, it's very special. Like the stories are. I feel like I've learned a lot, and also just really love the way you talk about your family, and the honor that you have or that you show to your family, and it's just feels very genuine and lovely and not staged,
Like your kitchen.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Cooking with matcha? It all starts with the right tea. And that's where you need to pick Mizuba Tea Co., sourced directly from heritage tea farms in Japan. Mizuba's matcha is crafted by award-winning farms in Yuji, Japan. Vibrant, umami-rich, and stone-milled per traditional methods. It's the top quality ingredient for lattes, desserts, and even savory dishes. Not to mention whisking on its own as a ceremonial-style matcha. Whether you're making a matcha cheesecake or dreaming of a spring matcha tiramisu, start with the best. Taste the tradition. Shop at mizubatea.com. That's mizubatea.com. And use the code Joy of Matcha, that's JOYOFMATCHA, for 15% off your first order.
And so now we'll get into our listener question of the week. And Sarah, you are welcome to. We're going to chat a bit, but you are absolutely welcome to provide your opinions here as well. Sarah, can you play the clip?
I wanted to stay in on my birthday this year and decided to purchase a good caviar for the occasion. I knew how I wanted to prepare it, but I didn't know how to take care of it once it arrived and what to do on the day I wanted to serve it. I always try to reference the joy of cooking for preparation advice before going to the internet, so I looked up caviar and I was surprised to learn that you should not use metal utensils when scooping it, which is something I would definitely have done without consulting Joy. Well, it's not really a question. I wanted to let you know how much I appreciate and use the reference parts of the cookbook. Maybe this is something that would be interesting to talk about on the podcast. Thanks so much. I love the show. Katie in Los Angeles.
Thanks for that, Katie. And yeah, so I think last week we said that our topic was going to be caviar, but we kind of talked about it. And I think we were more interested in talking about the reference material in Joy, because that's more, it's not really a question. It's more just appreciating all of the reference material. And so I think a lot of folks consider Joy to be a giant recipe book, which it sort of is. What's the number of recipes that's in it?
The official,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I wanna
official
know.
number.
4,500, I think.
That's a lot. So
but-
that's a lot of recipes.
That's a creative.
Yeah, that's a little bit
accounting.
inflated for marketing purposes, I think. And that includes all of the variations, the little
Yeah.
paragraph style variations.
It's about 2,500, maybe a little bit more on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think one of our favorite, I think my favorite part of the book is the Know Your Ingredients chapter at the very back. So if you have a copy of the 2019 edition, you can see where Know Your Ingredients is, because the edges of the page are gray. So it kind of sets it apart and you can easily flip to it. But that was my favorite part of the book to work on. And also, I think maybe in my opinion, the most useful part of the book.
We definitely have had a lot of conversations about how do we make this book more useful to people who have, who are like omnivorous with their, where they're getting their recipes, like whether it's online or in other books where maybe they're not going into all that much detail about either basic cooking techniques or sourcing ingredients or, how to treat those ingredients. But yeah, the caviar section's been in the book since like the 1963 edition, and we've definitely like lightly updated it, but Marion had a pretty good handle on it. I think we updated it to include like more domestic sources, more sustainable sources of caviar and stuff, like just mentioning that they exist. And of course there's other types of fish roe that are much more available now, like Tabico and stuff
Salmon roe.
Salmon roe. Yeah. I think the Marion was on the salmon roe, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Feels very 70s, 60s,
Yeah.
70s, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And John, I thought you found something interesting when you were looking up caviar earlier. Wasn't there a deviled egg recipe was it deluxe deviled eggs or
Yeah.
something?
It was in the 1931 edition. Yeah. Deviled eggs are our favorite special occasion.
What was the head note, though, that had a really interesting head note?
Well, yeah, it was like the recipe was for deviled eggs deluxe. And in parentheses right below it, Irma wrote, but no longer living up to their name since Woolworth has taken to selling caviar at 10 cents a tin. So,
That is wild to consider.
yeah, 10 cents a tin for caviar, but pretty nuts.
That's interesting to look at those really old editions, because like with the caviar, for example, but there are a bunch of oyster recipes in there, and oysters were very, very, very cheap in the 30s, and people ate them with more reckless abandon than they do now, which you can get oysters for $4 a piece.
Yeah.
And, I think lobster was a similar story. Lobster was not something that rich people ate. It was a poor man's food. And so I guess caviar at 10 cents a tin. I have no frame of reference for how expensive that would have felt at the time.
Well, yeah,
though.
you got to wonder what oysters were.
We should look that up. And going back to the references section too, I feel like because Joy is a traditional gift for, college grads or folks who just got married who might not have the background of cooking as much, I feel like highlighting that references section in any book, because I know, Sarah, you have a great references section in your book as well. Just reading how people cut different vegetables different ways, that kind of thing is so helpful for new cooks. And I love, like, I don't know, even in Sarah, in your book, you talk about how what your mom buys at Costco and then how she, saves it for future use. Those little tidbits in books, I absolutely love. Those are my favorite parts of cookbooks. That's why I sit down and actually read them like novels sometimes.
Yeah.
And you learn so much, and so many of those skills, like yeah, I can take a recipe and make that in the kitchen, but also I'm going to remember how to cut that carrot, forever because I read that section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we were developing the bibimbap recipe, there's a lot of knife work in general with Korean cooking, a lot of knife work to the point where it's not really considered a skill. It's just kind of expected in Korean cooking to cut things very slim and very fast. But when we made the bibimbap recipe and ATK was making it and we are getting ready to photograph it, they were the ones preparing it. We saw the carrots and we're like, oh, no, this is way too thick. And then we had to send it back for them to cut it again. And then it came back too thick, even still for us Koreans, where if Koreans saw it, they would be like, did a Korean cut that or no? And then they saw the way my mom cut her carrots and how she stacked it at a slant. And they're like, oh, we need to put that in the book because I don't think people are familiar with it. And they're like, this method is so genius, but also makes sense because Koreans do so much knife work. But that didn't occur to me because for me, for us, that's second nature.
Right.
Are you talking about the technique where you kind of shingle the slices of carrot so that it's kind of like dominoes?
Yes, exactly. And then you cut it like that. And then Koreans, we also use so much garlic. I've gone to school and people have said, what's that garlic smell? And it was me. But we never buy garlic that, I don't even know the right words because we don't ever have it. We never buy garlic that comes in its flesh and the flaky skin. I'm not even using the right terms.
Head of garlic.
Yeah. We always buy the peeled garlic. And I know peeled garlic has a lot of controversy for some cooks, but we all mince it in a food processor and then freeze it. But every time any Korean posts that online, it goes super viral because it's just like, we didn't think of that.
Yeah, aha.
Yeah.
Definitely had an aha moment with, putting it into the Ziplocs and then dividing it into a grid.
It's super smart.
Yeah.
Someday we will attain that level of
And this
awesome garlic prep.
just a flag for everybody to read those reference sections in your cookbooks. It's
Absolutely.
so important.
And like you were saying earlier, Shannon, in my opinion, the intent of the reference material to me is that, you can learn how to cook from recipes and then you know how to cook from recipes. But if you kind of know how ingredients behave, what other flavors they go well with, a little more background, it kind of opens up the world of cooking to you more. So you are less dependent on just the recipe.
Right. Like if you learn why you're cutting an onion a specific way for specific reasons, like that is going to just be ingrained in I feel like for me, that gets into my brain and I take that with me a lot more than just, reading a recipe and cooking that recipe. If I know the reasons why and how to use them in the future, I just reference sections for the win.
Yeah, I mean, we all need substitutes for son mat until we get enough.
We get there.
We get enough time in the kitchen under our belt.
Exactly.
I am curious what you guys think of like ingredients. Like, do you guys also put ingredient recommendations? Because I realized if I use a different brand, it has the ability to ruin a recipe. And when developing this cookbook, I realized, when I've used other people's recipes, it didn't come out good. And I wondered, how is this possible? But it's the ingredients and the brands. And I wanted to know what your guys' thoughts were on that.
It's impossible to really anticipate like all the troubles that readers are going to have like that. I feel like you can maybe, write recipes to the point where you be specific where you need to be. But then, maybe when you're talking about the amount of carrots in a recipe, getting back to carrots, but, maybe you don't need the gram weights for the carrots. And so you get people to maybe care about the things that are most important that are going to affect the flavor. But yeah, as far as like brands go, Joy of Cooking's never had brands.
Yeah, Joy of Cooking has historically not given brand names. I think more out of a concern around not wanting to seem like we're being sponsored or like, something like that. But I do think, as we move into the next edition, that's a conversation that we should have because sometimes it does make a huge difference.
Because we're thinking about being sponsored.
No, but I do think sometimes it is really important. There is a way to make something that, it will turn out better if you just use a specific brand. And there are so many choices. So yeah, we should talk about that.
Like Heinz ketchup is my favorite ketchup.
Well, there's just that everyone knows that.
I had the issue of there's the plum extract brand that we use, and we mentioned the two brands that we recommend. But I just got another one this weekend, and just it was cheaper. Ingredients seemed fine. I cooked 3 meals with it, and we had to throw it away because it was that terrible. And it made me wonder, like, oh my gosh, if someone got this brand, they would think our recipes are terrible.
Oh, what was different about the flavor for the plum extract?
It was just, I don't know. So plum extract is like a multi-dimensional liquid sweetener. It was much darker in color, which my mom thought immediately was suspicious because she's never seen it that dark. But it had a very fermented, unpleasant sweetness to it.
Huh.
And it completely overtook the entire dish where that's the only thing you could taste. It was not harmonious.
Well, now I'm going to have to check the brand we have just to make sure that we don't have the
Talk
bad
about
one.
this off camera or off mic.
And before we wrap up the show or start to wrap up the show, I just wanted to announce this week's Joy Scouts recipe. So we wanted to pick something this week that was from the Know Your Ingredients chapter of the book.
And maybe a little bit more accessible than a recipe
Caviar.
that calls for caviar.
Yeah, right. I didn't feel quite comfortable calling for caviar and something. But this is actually delicious with caviar if you happen to have some. Our recipe of the week is homemade creme fraiche. It is on page 974. And the reason I love this recipe is because it's so easy to make. Creme fraiche is pretty expensive if you try to buy it in the store, and some places don't have it at all, or their stock might not turn over as quickly because it's not something people buy a lot. But it's very easy to make. I used to work at a restaurant, and we made our own. We would make like a gallon of creme fraiche at a time, and you really just need buttermilk or yogurt and heavy cream, and just let it stir a spoonful of that in. Let it hang out at room temperature for a day or two until it thickens. It's extremely easy. And again, that's on page 974. If you're not sure how to use it, we have a few recipes in Joy that call for it. We have actually a creme fraiche ice cream recipe that's very, very good. And then I like to use it half and half in whipped cream. So I'll use half just heavy cream and then half creme fraiche. And it stabilizes the whipped cream, so it makes it extremely velvety and smooth and prevents the whipped cream from, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Weeping.
Yeah, weeping liquid or kind of getting soggy. It keeps it really stiff and nice for a long time.
Then it also adds a little bit of lactic tang to it, and it's really, really good with fruit desserts or just fruit.
Rhubarb conserve.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a topic, ingredient, or joy story to share, call our hotline at 503-395-8858. Leave us a message or send us a text. We would love to hear from you. Next week's topic comes from our caller.
Hello, longtime listener, first time caller. I want to hear your pizza thoughts. When did it enter joy of cooking? What are your favorite styles to make at home? Store-bought crust versus homemade? Deep dish versus thin? No matter how you slice it, just share your pizza passions.
What a
Love
great
it.
question. We'll talk about pizza next week. All right. What is everybody thinking about cooking this week?
Well, now I'm thinking about pizza.
I know. I'm so excited for this one.
Yeah, we should make some pizza.
Well, yeah, I mean, Memorial Day is coming up. A friend has offered to make homemade sausage and come over, and, really looking forward to that because it involves me not making homemade sausage.
Yeah, he's gonna make what did he say? Italian sausage, linguiça, and
Oh my gosh.
I'm forgetting now.
Bratwurst.
Bratwurst. Yeah. So you're gonna be here for that, Shannon.
Oh, okay. I was a little jealous.
You're invited to the party.
Oh, yeah.
I just read a book this week called Free Food, and it's kind of about hippie food and, like brown rice
Yeah.
bowls. And it just made me think a lot about, there was definitely a certain time in my life when I was in college that's basically how I ate. It was like brown rice, roasted vegetables, sauteed kale, some kind of sauce, like usually tahini sauce or something. But I am feeling really nostalgic for that kind of food. So I think I'm gonna dig into that a little this week.
Bringing it back.
Yeah. What about you, Shannon?
The opposite. I saw that recipe for rigatoni with white bolognese, which I've never done before, and I think I want to try it. It looks really good, so that's on my list to make. And then we have some really delicious frozen pierogies in the freezer, and so we're going to kind of come up with a pierogi night at some point.
What about you, Sarah? What are you cooking this week?
We had astraskaber bowls last night, which is like this herb that you can find in Russia, Korea, and China. It's really good and you mix it with rice. But I think this weekend I want to make shike, which is a Korean dessert drink. It's kind of like horchata, but a little different where you cook rice and ferment it just a bit before it turns into alcohol. And you do it with a malt powder. And it's a very malty, delicious, refreshing drink just because California, it's getting a little hot here.
Yeah.
Is it hot there in Oregon too?
No.
No, it's rainy and cold.
Oh, I'm sweating right now. I close my windows so that the podcast can be quiet, but it's getting hot here. And so that's one of the refreshing drinks that we like to have when it gets hot.
What's the texture of that like? Is it thicker or is it more on the thin side?
No, it's just like horchata where it's just like a normal drink. It has that malty and rice
That sounds
like
really
milkiness to it. It's a fascinating recipe. There's a lot of science to it. And if you guys are ever in California, you have to come over and try it.
good. I would love that so much.
That sounds
California
amazing.
trip.
Yeah.
You use
road
a
trip.
rice cooker to ferment it just for 3 hours.
Okay.
Oh, just like on the warm setting?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, gotcha.
And before we wrap, Sarah, where can listeners follow you?
Yeah, I'm everywhere on social under the handle Honest, AHNEST Kitchen. And I'm just very honest and frank, and I just share things as is. So I hope you guys find me there and enjoy it.
Thank you so much. And thanks for listening to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by subscribing to the show and leaving us a review. Follow us at joyofcooking.substack.com and on Instagram at thejoyofcooking. Stay tuned for next week where we will tackle pizza. And don't forget to make this week's recipe, homemade creme fraiche, on page 974. Call in with questions, hopes, history, or where you find joy in the kitchen. Our number is 503-395-8858. That's 503-395-8858.
And we could not do this without our fantastic team at the Joy of Creation production house. Thank you to Dave Drusky, our production coordinator, Haley Bowers, our audio engineer, and Sarah Marshall, our producer.